Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Sports and the AfCFTA webinar organized by Africa Sports Unified and the United Nations Commission for Africa and Africa Trade Policy Center. So to begin with, I welcome Laura Paez, Chief of Market Integration Section, UNECA, to please give us the key opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Abby. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from rainy Addis Ababa. A few opening remarks on behalf of ECA. It is my pleasure to join you today to discuss the state of sports manufacturing in Africa and the opportunities that arise with the African Continental Free Trade Area for African sports manufacturing companies to tap into regional markets, boost intra-African trade, and generate inclusive jobs that target the youth and women. I would like to extend, on behalf of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, a warm welcome to everyone who is participating here today, our distinguished speakers, and of course, our moderator, Abi. So let us ask ourselves the question, why sports manufacturing in Africa and the African Continental Free Trade Area? What is the link there? The sports sector, we all know, is very unique. It has the ability to intersect social, economic, and even political aspects of our societies. The sports industry also presents significant opportunities to drive economic inclusiveness, entrepreneurship, and innovation. In 2021, the global market for sporting and athletic goods reached a value of $110 billion and is expected to reach about $143 billion by 2025. We're seeing this driven mainly by emerging market growth, where the largest manufacturing region is Asia Pacific, with approximately 48% market value in 2020. Africa has not shied away from this trend. The sport industry has taken a leap and has an expected economic growth of 6.6% over the next 3 to 5 years to come. Both participatory sports and spectator sports are on the rise in Africa. And I'm sure you can all think of wonderful examples that lay evidence to this. With Africa's growing sports industry and the emerging market opportunities from the launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area, there is a solid foundation for Africa to tap into this market and diversify its economy in the sports manufacturing sector. The African Continental Free Trade Area has the objective to boost intra-regional trade and promote structural transformation and industrial development, as well as through diversification and regional value chain creation. We all experienced how on January 2021, trading under the African Continental Free Trade Area started, and from there on, this market constitutes the largest free trade area in terms of number of countries, and has an incredible size of 1.2 billion consumers and a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. The industry of sports manufacturing in Africa has a significant potential to harness the AfCFTA through various channels. It can better access resource inputs deriving from the continent through supply chains based on the tariff cuts of the AfCFTA. It has the opportunity to harness industrial diversification and integration into regional value chain to produce sporting goods from the continent for the continent. It can access a larger consumer base for manufacturing companies, and it can also have increased opportunities to attract investment into manufacturing companies that focus on sporting goods. We all know that the AfCFTA provides an opportunity to generate an inclusive and sustainable industry by creating decent jobs for youth and women in the sports manufacturing industry, by creating productive employment and leveraging youth's entrepreneurial capacity. However, we also know there are key barriers to boosting sports manufacturing in Africa, and these must be addressed efficiently to harness the full potential of the AfCFTA. Some barriers, as we know, are deindustrialization, recessions that we've been experiencing as a result of the COVID-19 disruption of trade and supply chains, and lacking infrastructure and access to finance. So what is ECA doing in this area? We have started and launched work on the stream of sports and trade to leverage the ability for sports to support the inclusive implementation of the AfCFTA by targeting youth, women and girls, and persons with disabilities. Through a range of activities, we aim to generate understanding of how building and growing an inclusive and sustainable sports industry can promote regional cooperation, entrepreneurship, and employability, among others. One such activity that we are promoting is the AfCFTA Global Mentoring Program, where mentees are paid with an industry, paired with an industry expert in various aspects of the sports and trade economy to help them identify career paths. We also have partnered with researchers such as those of the New York University to study and learn lessons from sports to support regional cooperation, boost intra-African trade, and promote peace and security. Last but not least, ECA and the African Sports Unified have also launched a podcast series of the AfCFTA and sport to support engagement of youth and women in the AfCFTA implementation. Today, I look forward to a fruitful discussion on solutions to the current challenges in the African sports manufacturing through the AfCFTA implementation. And I further encourage you all to participate in this very interesting webinar and to share your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you everyone that's just joining us. First of all, let me give some house rules. First of all, I'd like you to know that we have interpretation in both French and English, so please feel free to switch to the language that you'll be comfortable with. And we'll also like to thank the panelists that will be, taking us through this session. We have quite a number of interesting discussions that we'll be having today, and also very experienced panelists in, the section of sports and also the AfCFTA. So now I'll ask the panelists to please introduce themselves. Charlie Appleton, Chairman and Co-founder of Alive and Kicking Kenya.
Hi. My name's Charlie Appleton. I'm the chairman of Alive and Kicking Kenya. It is the Alive and Kick is one of the world's only non-for-profit sports manufacturers, non-for-profit. But we are basically positively impacting the lives and livelihoods of people facing disadvantage by producing sports balls, which makes ethical jobs for playing, for people, and for vital health education. We've been going from 2004. It was the original founder was Jim Cogan, who's actually a teacher from the UK. And he came into my office, and he started it actually in Nairobi. We started it from there, but we've grown to other countries. We've got a place in Zambia. We had a place in South Africa and Ghana. In the meantime, we've actually, in that time, we've produced over 1 million balls made, which is, we think about 45 people. So 45 million people probably had our balls. We've also actually created jobs, ethical jobs, and of which 92% of our workforce has actually never had formal employment before. In Kenya, we're about half women, half men, and about a third of our workforce have disability. We also donate balls. I mean, in the old days, I remember that there used to be footballs around that kids were playing with plastic bags all bound up with string. But we've now used corporates and NGOs and so forth to basically buy our balls and then give to disadvantaged children. So we think we've probably gone through about 8 million kids looking at our balls. I mean, quite frankly, when I was in Kenya, looking out in the rural areas, our balls are out there. They're all leather footballs, and they're very good for the conditions. But not only Kenya, we've actually exported to 84 countries. Now we've got an order to Brazil. But we also use that. So it's also about making and playing, but also about living. And we've probably touched on about 100,000 young people to use sport as an advocacy with partners. Now, in the old days, it was largely around HIV/AIDS and malaria. Nowadays, it's largely around mental health. And we did some stuff on social distancing and COVID as well. But we're using probably about, I think we trained up about 1,500 youth leaders to do that. So that's us. We started in 2004. It was actually started by some funds from British government through DFID, but probably we were self-sustaining after about 2 to 3 years, and we've been self-sustaining since. So anyway, that's me. So that's Alive and Kicking.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing in sports. Let's now have Ogot Udezue, co-founder of AFS Sports. Ogot, you have the floor.
Thanks for having me. I'm Ogot Udezue. I was a former athlete, and I was former vice president at BDA Sports in California. I moved back to Nigeria about 4 years ago. I started a basketball league, and while I was there, I noticed that finding good sports equipment was difficult. And then I noticed that a lot of the sports brands don't have any flagship stores in Africa. Then one thing that caught my eye was when we played basketball, the balls were very slippery. They were made for air-conditioned gyms in the western part of the world. And there was a lot of turnovers, so I created a ball that absorbs sweat. And that kind of created the premise. I also noticed that a lot of sub-Saharan Africans have flat feet. So we started creating shoes that accommodate that. And that's how AFA Sports came to be. It actually means Africa for Africa. Today, we started off very organically. Today, we have 3 stores in Nigeria. We are the first African brand to be at the Olympics, at the 2020 Olympics. And we're trying to use sports to promote African empowerment and also organically develop sports in Africa. We've employed over more than 1,000 people now. We make 80% of our products in Nigeria, and we're trying to expand across Africa.
Thank you, Ogot, and thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing in Africa. It's good to know that we have a lot of people that are actually doing the work in terms of sports in Africa. We don't get to hear a lot of that, so it's good to actually be on this session and to get to hear of the works that you're doing on ground. Let's now have John Oluwadero, a youth advocacy expert. Odo, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Oluwadero. I'm from Nigeria. I'm the Executive Director of Building Nations Initiative, BNI. BNI is a youth work and community development organization. We are committed to empowering young people as change agents in the society. So we basically use various positive development approach through sports, physical activities. We provide life skills training as well, and also we create a platform where young people can access learning opportunities as well. We do this through the youth centers we've established across 4 cities in Nigeria. Our headquarters is based at the University of Ibadan, where we run a community youth center that serves over 30,000 students on campus. Over the years, I've had to advocate the role of sports in promoting positive youth development, particularly from the Commonwealth Youth Program perspective, where I serve as African regional representative and later as advocacy focal person. During the course of my engagement, I led a national advocacy in Nigeria to promote the inclusion of young people in sport governance through the instrument of the Nigerian Sport Bill. That was in 2017 and later in 2018. One of the things that, let me say personally, I realized during the course of the advocacy is the fact that young people are willing and are ready to engage in sports. The opportunities that are available within sports manufacturing is highly dependent on youth participation in sports. However, there is not enough opportunities for engagement, for participation. There are no facilities on ground. And we could all realize that participation of young people in leisure and recreational activities are fundamental human rights. I were to go by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Convention on the right of children, and even on the rights of people with disabilities. So basically, I love advocating the rights of young people to participate in sports and recreational activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. It's good to have young people join us on this panel. And as we go into the discussion, of course, we're going to learn more about how young people can benefit from the sports industry and also the AfCFTA. Before we go into the discussion, I'm going to give a brief on what this webinar will be focusing on. So the webinar focuses on the challenges and opportunities of sports manufacturing on the African continent and the opportunities that arise with the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, to unlock particularly issues pertaining to employment, small to medium enterprises, youth, and women. And also considering that investment opportunities have been subdued due to the region's poor infrastructure and reputation for corruption and management of crisis. Currently, Africa engages the global value chain of supplying primary goods, and in comparison to other countries, Africa's intra-trade level is significantly low. And so this webinar aims at seeing how we could help the sports manufacturers benefit from the AfCFTA, and as the UNECA states that the African Continental Free Trade Area could create the largest free trade area in the world with 1.2 billion people and a $2.5 trillion economic bloc. So the main objectives of this session will be to look at the manufacturing practices in the past and also understand the lessons learned, and also just to see how we could move forward in this industry. So I'll first go to Charlie Appleton to please tell us, based on his experience as chairman in Alive and Kicking. So Charlie, what is the current state of sports manufacturing in Africa?
Okay, yeah.
And what are the major challenges faced?
Okay. Sports manufacturing in Africa. I mean, I heard all the stuff from Ugo and what he's doing in Nigeria. But to a large extent, I think that the sports manufacturing actually, although there's huge amounts of growth, and I heard in the keynote address about 6% of it, etc., it is quite, in my view, it is quite limited. I just want to tell you about the how we started. Basically, there was a bull manufacturing company actually in Nairobi back in the 90s, which was closed down. It was about making hand-sewn leather balls, which actually supplied Adidas. And with the change of going down to synthetic balls, technologically, that organization could not do it. And basically, orders have been going to particularly to Pakistan. Now I'm talking about ball manufacturing. The situation now is that a town in Pakistan called Sialkot is actually producing 50 million balls a year and supplies all the top ones, be it Nike, Adidas, Puma, Reebok, anything. So, I mean, that's got huge amounts of industrial experience. And what do we have in Africa? Now, we carried on and we started, as I said, in 2004. It was largely around leather balls. Now, leather balls are really good in Africa, really good for African conditions. And as I mentioned earlier, we've become sustainable. We've become very sustainable. But we're not up there to the big guys who are doing things that are supplying the world. I mean, essentially, I think in that town, they're supplying about 60% of the world's footballs. And that's in Sialkot, Pakistan. So, look, the situation is that we do have limited manufacturing, but we can do a lot more. Now, there's issues around that. Why did it go there? Now, the issue around there is obviously the entrepreneurship, the ecosystem in Pakistan, specialization done by manufacturers, particularly in Ogot and so forth, and possibly about very low labor costs, possibly. But that's the situation. But for us, if we only have a tenth of that, it's a lot of manufacturing. But we have to do things. We have to do things better. We have a problem, I think, really, if we're going to start producing synthetic balls ourselves, is trying to get importing the inputs. We can't really get the polyurethane stuff without importing it from Pakistan, and also the leather balls we're actually buying bladders from India. So all those situations there, but that's just not to say that we can't do it in Africa. I think we can, particularly if you look about, as I say, free trade areas. If I was coming from Kenya, I talk about the EAC and what progress has been done in the EAC is very good. How economies are becoming more integrated. How the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is coming up with huge amounts of people. So there could be some real opportunities for entrepreneurs to do this, for doing manufacturing. But as we are at the moment, we're quite limited, but we need more. Now, probably in order to get it all done, yes, we need getting the imports and everything, but basically we need about finance to actually get things going. But I know that we're probably going to touch on that later on in the session. So that's my view. It'd be nice to hear from others on that.
Thank you, Charlie. So looking at what you've talked about, if we are to go, one step at a time, what would you say is the one major hurdle that needs tackling?
Sorry, which is?
What would you say is the one major hurdle that needs tackling? What would you start with? Okay,
well, the main for us is actually finance to get things going, to actually starting industries, in my view. The whole issue, I think, of the whole issue around trade is also really important as well. The issues are, and there are two things, is basically reducing the barriers of trade. And I think Ugo mentioned it before, he wants to trade around Africa. We want to get the barriers down. So we want to get the costs down of transport, because sometimes, particularly in landlocked countries, transport costs can be about 3/4 of the actual cost of the goods, about transport costs. So we have to get that down. We have to reduce tariffs, yes. We have to have free trade areas, but we also get efficiencies at the port, efficiency at the border posts, efficiency on electronic clearing, reduction on non-tariff barriers. We have a hell of a lot more on that, particularly around borders, to just get the costs down, to get the barriers down. But at the same time, we have to increase our competitiveness. And even to get the competitiveness, we have to build a supporting ecosystem. And in order to do that, I think you need to have some finance as well to do it. For ourselves, if we could import some raw materials in Africa, it will make a lot better and get our costs down, and we can do it. Now, I think, I'd say about the EAC, I think our intra-Africa trade is about 17% of our trade, 17%. In the EU, it's about 68%. So there's an awful lot of time that we should be trading in Africa. There's a huge amounts of scope for doing trading in Africa. And that, as I said, it's by reducing those barriers for trade and also getting the competitiveness and getting the products out to the people. Now, to a certain extent, we've done that in Alive and Kicking, because our balls are primarily leather balls, and it's really good for African conditions. It's a lot better than the plastic balls, which will pop after a week. Our balls will still keep going. But then again, we still need to probably invest in synthetic balls for stuff in urban Africa, for instance. And to do that, we have to import machines. And in order to get machines, we have to buy them, and it costs quite a lot of money. And there's a limited finance. But we can also export outside. Now we are exporting outside. We are currently in Alive and Kicking, we have about 10% of our production is about exporting, 6% to Africa and 4% primarily to the UK. We should get, our growth should be a lot more than that. And it should be a lot more, particularly, as I said, about intra-Africa, but also about selling balls outside. And we do gift balls in the UK for clubs. You can see it on our websites, where we have some really good high quality balls, not necessarily for playing, but for the fans, particularly Premier League fans and so forth, where we're exporting it. And if anybody here is an Arsenal fan, there's a nice ball that's very good for Arsenal, which is, I know times are really bad for Arsenal in the Premier League at the moment. Just go and buy a ball there and just keep playing. But there's a lot more, you know, there's a lot more. So we can get exports out, and we can actually get exports out also on synthetic balls and not necessarily on leather balls, but we need to get the cost down. We need to get the cost down.
Thank you, Charlie, and I hope those challenges will be addressed even as we continue with the discussion. Let's go to Ugo. Ogot, please tell us your experience with localizing sports in manufacturing, in sports manufacturing in Africa.
Thank you. And I was just listening to Charlie, and a lot of the things he's saying resonates with the challenges and the opportunity. You know, the potential for us is for Africa in sports is immense. I think it's a much neglected area, and I think the mindset and the attraction towards it, a lot of people are so focused on the natural resources. But the best natural resource, I think, is the human resource we have in Africa with the potential of sports. And we started our brand about 3 years ago. And in just 3 years, building a brand from scratch and working towards trying to use that not just as a product, but also as a message. And I think we've achieved so much because we haven't even tapped into 1% of our opportunity. And the Nigerian market alone, I think it's a huge market. You know, I understand the challenges across Africa, the shipping, but I think even with all the challenges, the market is still huge. You know, one thing we've done is not trying to focus on or compete with the big brands. We are trying to develop products for the African market, for the African people. You know, in the athleisure business, we develop products we trademarked it called Afri-Leisure. So we are taking traditional African concepts and modernizing it and bringing it to life where the people want it. We haven't even had time to advertise our product, but we can't keep anything on the shelves. And we started organically. We started selling one shoe a month to now selling thousands of shoes every month. So I think the potential is huge. In terms of manufacturing, it helps us keep our costs low. Yeah, bringing in the machineries, bringing in the training and expertise has been difficult, and finding the right people in an industry that before didn't exist in our community is hard. But when you're dealing with the high exchange rates of the dollar and everything else, I think in the end of the day, we still sell below the existing, or we still sell our product. We find a way to make our products more affordable to the populace. So I think for us, it's just about growth and time, and also if there's an opportunity, because it's easier for us to ship to Western countries now than it's easier for me to ship to Great Britain than for me to ship to Kenya or to ship to South Africa, or especially the Francophone versus the Anglophone situation in Africa. We find that it's easy to go into the Anglophone countries than versus going to the Francophone countries. You know, so there's a lot of challenges, but I think all this will take time. We are very optimistic about the opportunity, and we're optimistic about, especially with Africans in diaspora, that love our product. This product I'm wearing now, we call it the LIV tracksuit. It has all the flags of all the African countries, 54 African countries. We can't keep it on the store. So I think the potential is huge. And for us, whatever profit we make, recycling it into the economy and helping develop grassroots sports, I think there's a symbiotic opportunity for everybody.
Thank you, Ogot, and we wish you all the best. We really want to have this, sports manufacturing industry grow in Africa. So we hope that you and your company could, continue to tap into the different opportunities that exist in this industry and just help the sector grow. I'll now go to John. John, having served as the Africa Regional Representative for the Commonwealth Youth Sport for Development and Peace Network, and also you have led the nationwide Sport for Development in Nigeria campaign. So how would you say governments could strengthen youth inclusion in sports manufacturing and trade, and what do you think are the implications that the AfCFTA could have in supporting this development?
Okay, thank you very much. First, I would like to say that for government to be able to effectively engage young people in sports manufacturing, we must first perceive sports from the perspective of human rights. We must see that participation of children and young people in sport is fundamentally human rights, and it must be treated as such. Just as government sees it as essential to provide good roads, to provide electricity, to provide water. So also the need for young people to access sports facilities and playgrounds is also fundamentally their human rights. Even much more the inclusion of disabled people in sporting facilities, making it disability friendly. These are all human rights issues that for government to actually want to engage young people in sports manufacturing, it must be treated as such, because once we have more people participating in sporting activities and recreational activities, we're going to have more demand for our sport goods. And when the demand for sport goods increases, it will actually enable the sports manufacturing industry in Africa, more so the local manufacturing too. So I believe that the first thing is for governments to make adequate investment in promoting participation of young people in leisure and sporting activities. And that has to be in form of investment in making available sporting facilities and also necessary policy to ensure that there is inclusive participation of young people in sport. I would like to give an example, which is the Lagos City Marathon. In 2016, the Lagos City Marathon had just 50,000 participants, and in 2020, over 150,000 people participated in that city marathon. Just imagine the number of sportswears that was used for that marathon and how it will have scaled up in a matter of 4 years. And let's imagine if every city in Africa actually also hosts their city marathon. And let's even move away from city marathon and go into probably cycling, as in the case of Ride to Go. So we get to see that the more sporting activities taking place in the continent, the more the demand for sporting goods and the more opportunities create for including young people in the opportunities that sports manufacturing offers. So for government to effectively engage young people in sport manufacturing, I would like to see it from the perspective of affirmative action. Government will have to make intentional commitments. First of all, we had, I think this issue happened in Kenya sometimes ago, where a school playground was to be converted into a real estate property. So our government must ensure that playgrounds are well protected. Two, government must ensure that there is adequate training and skill development of young people who are involved in sports manufacturing. So that would be made possible either in form of apprenticeship or maybe internship or fellowship program. For example, maybe some young graduates can be sent to Ugo to learn the art of sports manufacturing probably for 6 months, and they get to pick practical skills there. I would prefer, these have to be practical. It shouldn't be something done virtual or something you just go for 1 week or maybe a learning visit. It has to be on job learning. So availability of internships, apprenticeship or fellowship programs that gives young people on the job learning experience will actually boost the participation of young people in sport manufacturing. Also, incentives must be made available, really. Charlie was talking about the place of funding. Incentive must definitely be made available. If you actually want young people to be involved in sports manufacturing, there has to be incentive. Funding has to be made available, grants or soft loan, and also the place of tax exemption by the time they get to start their businesses. The other thing also I want to draw attention to is the place of the informal sector. We get to realize that most young people start their business in the informal sector before scaling up to the formal sector. There has to be capacity building that will help young people have the competencies to be able to scale their business from the informal sector into the formal sector. According to ECA, about 70% of the informal intra-African trade on the continent is done by women. So by the time you also bring gender perspective to it, you get to also see that when you involve women also in sports manufacturing, and you also empower them to move from that informal sector to formal sector. There are a lot of opportunities you also create for the sports trade industry as well. So one of the other ways the government would also encourage the inclusive participation of young people in sports manufacturing is to make certain percentage of contracts for supplies of sports goods or maybe construction of sporting facilities. We start certain percentage of that for young people. Let young people be able to bid for contracts that involve supply of sports goods or maybe construction of sporting facilities, and ensure that the percentage you commit to be able to actually work towards that fulfillment. What that will ensure is that, first of all, we want to ensure that young people are well trained in terms of procurement and supply chain. We want to ensure they are well trained in terms of sports manufacturing. They've been able to bring up their businesses to that level of competence that they're able to participate in public procurement. And really, the best way to empower young people is to give them the opportunity. So without giving them the opportunity, whatever it is we are saying is just a method. So government must be ready to make the opportunities available for young people. As regards the implication of the AfCFTA, one thing I would like to call attention to is the fact that the AfCFTA is going to widen the market for young people. That means that if you look at the diversity of sports on the continent, for example, cricket is more known to South Africa. If sports manufacturing within for cricket is done in South Africa, someone can come from Nigeria where cricket is not well known, go for a learning visit. I'll call this youth sport exchange. Go for a learning visit in South Africa, learn about cricket, learn about the sports manufacturing for cricket games in South Africa, is able to bring that to Nigeria. One thing the AfCFTA is going to do is going to allow for this cross-fertilization of ideas across the continent. And young people will be able to effectively key into that to widen their markets. There's going to be surplus supplies, and inter-country investment diversification for entrepreneurs and investors that are looking to invest in businesses owned by young people. That is one thing that AfCFTA is going to do. And the other thing is also there's going to be job creation, because once we have more of these sports industries coming up, creating job opportunities, young people are going to get employed, and the issue of unemployment crisis in Africa will be properly addressed. Also, cross-cultural competence. This is something that is so dear to my heart because Africa is the continent that is well diverse in terms of languages and culture. Choose what I've called youth sport exchanges. AfCFTA is going to create the opportunity for young people to also gain that intercultural competence, being able to learn of other culture, being able to learn of other businesses or the recreational opportunities that are available in a particular country or in a particular region of the African continent. I would say, that would be one way that AfCFTA will contribute to promoting sports manufacturing. Thank you.
Let's go to Ogot. Ogot, please tell us your experience with localizing sports in sports manufacturing in Africa.
Thank you. And I was just listening to Charlie, and a lot of the things he's saying resonates with the challenges and the opportunity. The potential for us is for Africa in sports is immense. I think it's a much neglected area, and I think the mindset and the attraction towards it, a lot of people are so focused on what's a lot of people are focused on the natural resources, but the best natural resource, I think, is the human resource we have in Africa with the potential of sports. And we started our brand about 3 years ago. And in just 3 years, building a brand from scratch and working towards trying to use that not just as a product, but also as a message. And I think we've achieved so much because we haven't even tapped into 1% of our opportunity. In the Nigerian market alone, I think it's a huge market. I understand the challenges across Africa, the shipping, but I think even with all the challenges, the market is still huge. One thing we've done is not trying to focus on or compete with the big brands. We are trying to develop products for the African market, for the African people. In the athleisure business, we develop products we trademarked it called Afri-Leisure. So we are taking traditional African concepts and modernizing it and bringing it to life where the people want it. We haven't even had time to advertise our product, but we can't keep anything on the shelves. And we started organically. We started selling one shoe a month to now selling thousands of shoes every month. So I think the potential is huge. In terms of manufacturing, it helps us keep our costs low. Yeah, bringing in the machineries, bringing in the training and expertise has been difficult, and finding the right people in an industry that before didn't exist in our community is hard. But when you're dealing with the high exchange rates of the dollar and everything else, I think in the end of the day, we still sell below the existing, or we still sell our product. We find a way to make our products more affordable to the populace. So I think for us, it's just about growth and time, and also if there's an opportunity, because it's easier for us to ship to Western countries now than it's easier for me to ship to Great Britain than for me to ship to Kenya or to ship to South Africa, or especially the Francophone versus the Anglophone situation in Africa. We find that it's easy to go into the Anglophone countries than versus going to the Francophone countries. So there's a lot of challenges, but I think all this will take time. We are very optimistic about the opportunity, and we're optimistic about, especially with Africans in diaspora that love our product. This product I'm wearing now, we call it the LIV tracksuit. It has all the flags of all the African countries, 54 African countries. We can't keep it on the store. So I think the potential is huge, and for us, whatever profit we make recycling it into the economy and helping develop grassroots sports, I think there's a symbiotic opportunity for everybody.
Thank you, Ogot, and we wish you all the best. We really want to have this, sports manufacturing industry grow in Africa. So we hope that you and your company could, continue to tap into the different opportunities that exist in this industry and just help the sector grow. John, back to you. Would you also please tell us the importance of having specific sports bodies that could help leverage the advancement of sports manufacturing?
Okay, thank you. During the course of my engagement with the Commonwealth Youth Program, one of the things I learned is that most African countries do not have a platform for including young people in sports governance. So we started, that was one of the things that led us to start the advocacy we did in Nigeria to ensure that on the board of the National Sports Commission, or whatever governing body exists in a Commonwealth country at national level, there is a youth representative on the board. One thing that would do, bringing this conversation into sport manufacturing, one thing that will do actually is that it will enable young people to be able to advocate for that need for inclusive engagements of youth in sport manufacturing. I would like to call this something like maybe youth in sports trade working group. Let's say there is a Pan-African interagency called Youth in Sports Trade Working Group. I'm assuming, I'm just saying, let's say it's actually being managed or being supervised by the ECA, has two African Trade and Policy Center, Division of Sports of the African Union, and has the commitments of the member states. One thing that is going to happen if such a kind of platform is available is that it will enable young people to be able to advocate and demonstrate best practices in sports manufacturing. They'll be able to educate, demonstrate and advocate best practices in sports manufacturing. They'll be able to work with member states to ensure that all of the commitments they've made as regard providing incentives, providing incentives, providing internship and apprenticeship opportunities, making sports manufacturing indeed a commitment. This working group will be able to work in respective countries to ensure that government keeps to the implementation of the commitment. So there is a need to have such a kind of body that is solely committed to advocating, demonstrating, and educating the public on the contribution of sports manufacturing to the implementation of the CFTA and even for economic development of Africa. So, and one way to go by it, I think, is to engage young people across board. Let them be young people that are so much involved in terms of manufacturing, those involved in trade. Not that they are manufacturer, but their own role is to get the products from the manufacturer and ensure that it gets delivered to those that need it. More like a supply chain model. So there's also those that will advocate that also those that will advocate increased participation of young people in sports. So when this kind of working group is available that has various stakeholders in the sports industry coming together to work hand in hand, we're definitely going to see a better outcome. Then, for example, I will also say that in Africa, we've not had this idea of having youth centers with recreational facilities. It's not a common thing that we are used to. I mean, if you go to the likes of the UK or the US, you get to see the likes of YMCA centers that has swimming pool, that has gym, that has all of this. We've not had a proliferation of centers like this across the continent. So once advocacy is done and investment opportunities are created, definitely working groups like this will ensure that young people that are involved in sport manufacturing are able to start into that market. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Rachel A. Aaron asks, what specific types of financing options should be developed for sports entrepreneurs to further support their abilities to benefit from the AfCFTA? So please open up this question to any of the panelists.
Can I have a go at that? Abby?
Yes, please go ahead, Charlie.
Okay. Yeah, the issue about the issue about finance. I mean, that's actually a crucial thing about getting manufacturing and getting businesses going, basically. I mean, as I said, I've been chairman of Live and Kicking for a number of years, but my actual day job was I actually worked as a partner at KPMG, and particularly founded the international development sector, actually working with agencies. So if there's any development agents looking on in this seminar and this exit, is possibly to looking at starting up challenge funds, so enterprise challenge funds. So basically to get some donor money to de-risk investments, it's really difficult to get investments from either the bank or from now venture capital companies for something. And right at the early stage, there's a whole issue around venture capital companies, banks, fund managers, impact investors. But right at the beginning, there's an ability to actually create something which is kind of de-risk the investment, right? Now, I mentioned earlier that Alive and Kicking actually got started. I think we got a $200,000 grant from the British government. But there's many other enterprise challenge funds which have some amazing stuff. I mean, one of which I think is called the Financial Sector Deepening Challenge Fund, which started in M-Pesa. Now, M-Pesa became, with Vodafone, became an amazing thing. Likewise, I got involved in the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, and there was stuff around renewable industries, and places like copper was started as well from a grant from donors, but also a grant from the private sector people putting it in. So it's kind of matching grants. So if any development partners are out there looking at this, so maybe there should be setting up a finance and enterprise challenge fund across Africa about manufacturing, and possibly about manufacturing, but other parts of Africa, the sports ecosystem as well, that you can use to actually kickstart industries. It's not necessarily like backing winners like M-Pesa or M-Copper or other stuff in agriculture, but it's also to start the races and actually starting industries. So I think that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, and it's probably from the other stuff, is what I'm saying a little bit later, is venture capital companies do it, impact investors doing it, and I think there'd be a lot of it. And largely the issue around the African diaspora, but I think we'll talk about that. But we need to have some finance to start the races, basically get it going. There's, as I mentioned earlier, there's and I has said from the other panelists, there's huge amounts of opportunities here, a massive market. It's issues around inclusivity of sport, the issue around the demographics, whereby the median age of Africa is under 20, as opposed to Europe is probably over the, and the rest of the world and developed world is over 40. So there's huge amounts of opportunities, but we just need to get it going, basically. And there's a little finance coming from governments, particularly now after the COVID crisis and so forth. Maybe there's a lot more. There's money coming from development partners, but that could be one way of doing it. Likewise, you can, with development partners, it's not only about starting industries, but also putting development metrics in as well. Like what we've done in Alive and Kicking, with the inclusivity, using sport as advocacy and all the rest of it. So you can also put some development metrics in as well.
Thank you, Charlie. Rachel, I hope that answers your question. I'll go to the next question from Judith Macaria. Judith asks, how do they deal with the skepticism in a developing industry in the continent, especially for startups? So let's go to Ugo. Ugo, please answer the question, then we can direct it to any other panelists. Please go ahead.
I think, thank you very much. I think skepticism I think from my own experience, that's normal, especially when you're starting a business in sports business in Africa right now, because most people don't even understand that the mindset doesn't even understand the business of sports mostly. I think you don't just deal with it. I think for us, all we just do is show the opportunity. I think the industry sees so much untapped. And when you're going to an industry where nobody understands it, there's gonna be a lot of controversies. A lot of people don't understand what's going on. I think for us in the beginning, it was so much of a challenge. Everybody thought that they didn't understand where we're going, but we always focus on the long-term play. Building a brand, we could easily have, for example, brought in another brand to build on in Africa, but I think for us, we are more focused on building a brand organically that reflected the message we wanted to create. We weren't just trying to sell products. Alpha Sports for us was more of trying to send a message, a positive one for Africa. So I think skepticism is part of what you have to face. There's no issues with that. I think for us, it's also a motivation more than anything else. And it's an opportunity. So when you face that, then you're doing something right.
Thank you, Ugo. Does anyone else want to answer that question? Okay, Judith, I hope your question has been answered. We'll go to the next question from Joseph Kivaso. Josephat, asks, how do we go about informing the youths on the various taxes and allowances enjoyed? And how do we ensure government participation? He also goes further to ask, how do we ensure trade agreements can work hand in hand with tax agreements so as to help the youth venture into the international markets? John, please answer Josephat's question.
Okay, please, can I get that question again, please?
Okay, so Josephat asks, how do we go about informing the youths on the various taxes and allowances enjoyed? And also, how do we ensure government participation? He also asks, how do we ensure trade agreements can work hand in hand with tax agreements, just so we could help young people venture into the international market?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think it was out to be about advocacy. So young people must actually be out there advocating for the implementation of government commitments. Government essentially, I believe government reacts based on demands. If there are no demands for the implementation of any policy, governments will not make it a priority, essentially. So I think young people, first of all, needs to be very much aware about the Continental Free Trade Agreement, sport manufacturing, and all of the opportunities available. Young people must ensure that they educate themselves about all of these opportunities, have adequate information that is needed to advocate government response to the implementation of necessary policy that will create these opportunities. Then from the place of the awareness and the education, they must also demonstrate best practices. We must be able to show that, see, we don't just know about this thing, we've shown that we can do it. Ugo is a very, very good example in this regard. He has demonstrated example. I think what is actually needed at this phase is for sort of mentorship to be made available for other young people that are interested in sports manufacturing that could probably be mentored by someone like Ugo. And from there, you know, you've provided the education, they are aware, you've demonstrated best practices. Now at that level, you have the confidence to go out there to advocate, to make the demands for governments to make the environment favorable for young people to participate in. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Can I add to that?
Yes, Ogot, please go ahead.
I don't think there's any curriculum for sports production, or especially in Africa. For me, coming into that space, I didn't have any experience in production, manufacturing, inventory management, design. I had zero experience. It was just passion. I got into a plane, went to China. The first time, I didn't even know who I was gonna go visit. I just got on a plane and went to Guangzhou and started walking around, researching and looking for factories. So I think most of it has to come with a lot of passion, a lot of direction in what you're trying to do, and that attracts other opportunities to you. I don't think there's I don't think I've seen a template anywhere else right now on manufacturing in Africa, with all the challenges with power, security, and all that stuff. You just gotta understand the market. You just gotta be in the mix. You gotta know how to move around in Africa to understand these things. Even if someone came to me and said, how do you do it? You know, maybe 5 years from now, I can write a book on it, but you just have to have the willpower and knowing how to deal with people. And sometimes governments are friendly. For us to be on the Olympics, it was actually the Nigerian government that came to us and said they wanted local manufacturing. We didn't even look for that. So that was huge for us. And they did their due diligence, research, came to our factories, looked at everything and said, okay, we want a local product, local brand to support our Olympic team. So I think there's a little bit of preparation. So when the opportunity comes, you're ready for it. And just tenacity and passion.
Thank you, Ugo. I love how optimistic that is. There's no specific formula, but it's a matter of hard work and also having the willpower to do so. Okay, thank you everyone for your questions. And I hope each and every question that you did put out to us has been answered. We're going to have another round of questions after the next discussion. So having looked at the current challenges in sports manufacturing and what's currently obtaining on ground, we're going to go to another discussion to focus on what can be done and the way forward in trying to improve sports manufacturing. We're going to start with you, Ugo. With the implementation of the AfCFTA, how do you think governments can support sports manufacturing companies in Africa to harness the reduced trade barriers and also to increase engagement in regional trade?
I just think governments, like not just in sports, in trade and manufacturing, there's got to be a way that it's the ease of business. Because one thing with Africa is, for example, in Nigeria, the poverty levels, sometimes people are so poor, they're not even thinking about sports sometimes. People are more focused on trying to eat and trying to survive in most of these countries. And I think, first of all, to even get to the sports level, governments have to find a way to elevate poverty and grow the middle class in their countries. I think once we have a strong middle class, you're going to see the growth of sports even bigger than it is right now. I think right now, when it comes to sports, like John said, you don't, for us, even for me being a sports person, being a former NBA agent, I think I don't even look at sports as just winning games or going to the Olympics. I look at it as an opportunity to create, to build partnerships, to build leadership, to build confidence, to grow kids from beginning on how to work hard, etc., etc. So I think for us, where we are now, it's gonna take a long time for everything to come together. I think, but everything, you have to go for the long-term play. There's no short-term, I don't think there's any short-term opportunities here. With what Charlie is doing, that is amazing. I think being able to use sports for charity and for the message it's great. What John is doing is great. All these factors have to come together. There's not just one direction. There's multiple factors that have to grow simultaneously for all these things to able to come together. It might not be in this generation, but I think for us is to build what we can right now. I think Africa is going to open up. I think with time, people are going to understand that it benefits even the Europeans that Africa opens up than making it a closed country. And once it opens up, the opportunity, man, the opportunity is so limitless.
Thank you, Ugo. Talking about the AfCFTA opening up opportunities, if there was one key element you would introduce to help advance sports manufacturing opportunities within the AfCFTA, what would it be?
Distribution. There has to be an opportunity to sell products in Kenya, to sell products in Rwanda, to sell products in Ghana without restrictions, just like in Europe. Like Charlie mentioned, at 17%, the opportunity is so little. If we can grow it even to 40 to 50%, there'll be every sports brand in the world will be in Africa. Because potentially, in terms of human resources, in terms of like, there's no sports business in the world today that at least most of them are from Africa. So imagine bringing that back home. Imagine creating sports entities. Imagine creating our own NBA, our own EPL. Like, I'm talking about creating the same content we ship all over the world here in Africa. The whole ecosystem will surpass any natural resource you can get out of Africa.
Thank you, Ugo. I see Mark is back on. So before we lose you again, Mark, please go ahead and introduce yourself, and also please tell us about the credit guarantee scheme that was introduced by the Ministry of Youth and Sports to allow young entrepreneurs in creative industries access to finance. Just tell us how it could further explain how this can support entrepreneurs in sports manufacturing. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, good afternoon, and I'm glad to be here. My name is Mark Ogot. I'm the Director of Economic Affairs in the Ministry of East African Community. In the East Africa, we have, in every partner state, we have our ministry in charge of the East African Community issues. So that's where I'm working. My PS was supposed to be here, but he's not around, so I'm representing the PS. Now, on the issue of the credit guarantee scheme.
Mark, sorry to interrupt you. Could you please just lower your laptop so that we can see you? We are unable to see you at the moment.
I'm on my PC, and I think that I'm on my PC. It's not possible.
Okay, I think this is much better. So you can please go ahead.
Okay. The Kenya government, in order to promote youth employment, introduced a credit guarantee scheme among the youth, mainly targeting the creative industries to lower unemployment in Kenya and in the region. So it works that when the youth have an idea, but they don't have the resources, they apply for the funds, and mostly they prefer a group of youth so that it is sustainable. So they apply for the funds, and the fund is managed by a government enterprise, but also the funds will manage the enterprise in terms of skills, in terms of technical skills. So they don't just provide the funds, but they look at the farm in all round, what they lack, because sometimes it's not just the money. Sometimes the market, the skills, is how to get the technology on how to start the enterprise. Kenya has got a body that is that enables new enterprises to try to research products in Kenya and in the region. I don't know whether that one helps, or you want to ask a question.
Sorry,
now,
Mark,
in order to when I come to the CFTA is going to create a larger market, and now we are looking at a bigger market than what we have in the East Africa. So this is going to help the youth to get employment outside Kenya and outside the region. But also we need a lot of marketing, because most entrepreneurs in Africa lack marketing skills. They don't know about the market which is available in maybe the next country. So as we promote the CFTA, we need to have a way of to address what I call information asymmetry, lack of the market in other countries. So we need to bring this information to the youth so that they know that as I manufacture this product, I've got some market, for example, in West Africa, also Southern Africa. So they also need that kind of information to expand their horizons. And again, the skills. Now, manufacturers need some skills to make sure that they meet the market standards. This is now where we need to help them so that they can have products that can be sellable in Africa, because they're going to compete with the other products from the rest of the world. I don't know what else do you want, but that's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. You also, it's good that you mentioned, what opportunities the AfCFTA could create. Could you also please just take us through how the AfCFTA could create opportunities for SMEs, women, and youth in sports manufacturing, and how these groups of people could just tap into the opportunities that the agreement is set to create?
Now, currently, the Africa intertrade is about, I think it's about 15-16%, which is very low compared to other regions. So when we start trading among ourselves, we're going to increase that percentage to a higher percentage. When you increase that percentage, it means that we've got more manufacturers in Africa that are being sold in Africa. Then you're creating more wealth for the youth to have more money to buy what can they buy from Africa. Now, the market, for example, if we're trading at only 15%, it means that most of the resources that we are creating are going outside the continent. We are not trading among ourselves, so that most of the wealth that we have is going outside the continent. For example, when you talk about there are companies that, for example, manufacture balls in Kenya for football, handball, netball, rugby. Now, but again, you find that maybe we have got export from other parts of the world apart from Africa. So, but now Kenya, for example, Kenya in Africa, we export a lot of skills to other parts of the world to manufacture those things, then bring them back to Africa. It means that now, instead of exporting raw materials, we are going to do the same to add value and create what we can use, let's say leather, football leather and all that. So we are going to start trading on manufacturers rather than on basics material. For example, in East Africa, most of what we trade among ourselves are manufacturers. But when we're trading with outside world, we are trading money on semi-low value goods. So there's this opportunity for us to start trading on value-added goods rather than trading on low value goods. This is the way we can create wealth in Africa rather than depending on outside Africa to give us basics goods like footballs, like t-shirts, like sportswear. Kenya has got a lot of material potential to manufacture, for example, sportswear, even for the Olympics. But then we also need the support from other countries so that we, for example, we can add value chains. A country can produce A, another one produces B, then we have a way of having high-tech products which can also be bought by the main sports companies in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We hope we could have more value addition in the sector, considering that there's a lot of raw material exportation in Africa. So we hope that we could be able to manufacture more goods with value addition. Okay, going to Charlie. Charlie, you did mention about the challenges with regards to, financing sports manufacturing in Africa. So how do you think governments could support sports manufacturing in Africa and also just help with access to finance? And how do you think the AfCFTA could contribute to increasing this access to finance? Over to you, Charlie.
Well, I think, I mean, the difficulty is trying to get, finance from government. It's difficult, particularly in the situation now. In the situation, the COVID crisis is really quite difficult. As I mentioned, I think private sector finance or maybe some development finance might be good. I just wanted to check up on particularly what Hugo said about the issue about entrepreneurism and passion about doing it. Now, in many ways, if we're talking about, I'm just talking about Alive and Kicking now, but there's three ways of how we're going to grow Alive and Kicking. One is, as I mentioned earlier, it's about trading, export trading outside Africa, but also trading within Africa. Now, I know Hugo mentioned that I think he's going to grow his business by 60%. I think we're probably going to go to about 30%, whatever, because there are barriers. But essentially, that's number one. Two, we need to, as I say, to try and get finance. And what we normally do, we haven't had borrowings from the banking sector or anywhere else in the 17 years we've been going. But what we have done recently is getting impact investors coming in. So whereby people getting debt, which we pay back. I mean, we had to do a move and we got an impact investor coming in and he financed it and we paid it back, or most of it back. And we're quite ahead of the reschedule. So we've done that. So with that, we were trying to do that to increase our capacity, particularly if we're manufacturing synthetic boards for the local market and also for exports as well. The other thing, which I think is also important, is the issue around finance is to actually have Africa's case, right? I spoke about the issue around our leather balls are very good for the hard conditions in Africa. But in one of my previous job, my professional job, there are very different business models in Africa which work incredibly well. I mean, there are examples, in the banking sector, for instance. I mean, I remember back in the 90s, most banks were only looking at high retail customers, but Equity Bank in Kenya completely changed it by having transactional bank that became one of the biggest banks in East Africa, because and to have access to finance with people. To a certain extent, technological change, particularly with mobile phones and ICT. I mentioned before about the M-Copper stuff as well. But it's all about sort of going to they say earlier, it was C.K. Prahalad, the bottom of the pyramid, but it's the bottom-up stuff. Now, we are thinking about that in Alive and Kicking, that, we've got our factory, we've got a factory in Nairobi, we've got a factory in Lusaka and so forth. But what about devolving production to the people in the rural areas? That's a possibility there. Or often what we said about businesses in around Africa is using agency models. And many, many businesses have been pivoted onto this agency model, which is very African and also gets huge amounts of scale. We know about this ICT, we know about M-Pesa and everything, but it's all around about agents. And there's many of that in the agricultural world as well. So also that's also very important. So I think that, as I mentioned, and particularly Hugo mentioned, it's about passion and it's about entrepreneurism, but it's also about Africa and what's really good for Africa.
Thank you, Charlie. Back to you, Ugo. How can governments and private sector companies harness the potential for creating jobs for youth in the sports manufacturing sector, and how can they build the capacity needed in this sector? Also, going forward, what do you think needs to be done to ensure effective trade in Africa and also the growth of sports manufacturing?
I think is the mindset, first of all. I think governments have to understand. I think the perception of sports in Africa generally has not even been discussed from a business point of view. I don't even think it's been looked at as a potential right now. So I think it needs a little adoption into the perception of, okay, this is an opportunity. Somehow, I think what you guys are doing now, and that's one of the reasons I was excited about this opportunity you guys are presenting, is having the discussions and let people know that, you know, there's really a potential. I think I think a lot of people, I think the mindset is so used to the natural resources in Africa more than anything else. This takes a little bit of time and work. And I think governments can support it with various programs. I'm not a government person, so I'm not even sure how that works, but I'm understanding the African terrain. I don't even know how it works, but I think the best things government can do is the ease of travel, the ease of shipments, the ease of trading between African countries is the first step. You know, and people have to understand, like, I think there's so much connectivity between African countries and nations that is beyond the borders, that has to be harnessed. And looking at it from a One Africa point of view, a One African market. If we're able to, I think a One African market is scary to the rest of the world. If we can have a way to get that One African market, I think the potential, and I think that day will come. I think the potential is limitless, not just in sports, in everything we're doing. I'll look at some of the things, even in sports, where a lot of the federations, whether in soccer, for example, my company sponsors the Nigerian basketball women's team, and they have a game in Dakar. There's 30,000 people watching the game there are 30,000 people watching the game in the Dakar arena. But the game is not shown anywhere in Africa. It's mostly shown in Europe. Nobody can even watch it in Nigeria. You know, potentially as a sponsor, I'm looking at it as like, this does not make any sense. Financially and opportunity-wise, it doesn't even make any sense because my audience is not even watching it. This content is being taken out of Africa and taken somewhere else. You know, there are so many dynamics that, you know, how am I just hearing about Charles and John's? John is from Nigeria, and I'm just hearing about what he's doing. You know, I'm sure people over in Europe hear about it before me. You know, so there's so much things that need to be addressed. I don't even know where to start. I can talk about it from now to tomorrow. But what we're doing now is to start a block at a time. And what you guys are doing, trying to put together this forum and trying to talk about it and see what the opportunities and narrow down where to start and where to go. If not, it's just going to be a big jigsaw puzzle.
Thank you. Well, I hope we could be able to provide more information and have more discussions on this topic to help go around these challenges that you have mentioned. And okay, Dr. Segun Osidipe has just joined us. So please, Dr. Segun, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and also tell us, in your view, how the AfCFTA could impact manufacturing and trade for Nigerian manufacturers, considering the harmonization of standards, rules of origin, and also customs regulation across the continent. Over to you, Dr. Segun.
Good afternoon, distinguished panelists, moderator, and other participants. Like the moderator just introduced, I'm Oluwasegun or Osidipe. I would like to, first of all, ride on, because I've been listening in the last say, few minutes. Also join Ogot to commend the organizers for at least starting up a conversation of this nature that will enable us to begin to look at that particular segment of the economy, looking at sport industry or sport manufacturing. Straight to your question, I would say, looking at what will likely be the impact, I would say the future is very bright for Africa, I must say. When you look at the potentials of AfCFTA in terms of market size, in terms of cumulative GDP, I'm sure majority of us are familiar with the numbers that have been brandished since we commenced this process of putting the AfCFTA in place. So of course, the potential is very, very huge. And from the studying of the framework and implementation, so far, I can say, looking at the implementation stages, it's crystal clear that the impact of the AfCFTA, not only on sport manufacturing, on the entire sector, manufacturing sector in the continent, the regional level, and Nigeria will be outstandingly positive. But however, I need to throw a caveat. The caveat is if it's effectively or properly implemented, and if the necessary enablers, I think some of the panelists have been talking about some of those enablers are in place. Suffice to say, so that I can stop here, to say that the AfCFTA is a viable African project that by default, if you look at it, it has the capacity to unleash the potential of the entire continent. Fast-track development, stimulate improved productivity, promote efficiency, competition, and ensure effective maximization of the consumers, the welfare of the consumers in member state countries. As for manufacturing in Nigeria, yes, I would also like to say that it will, no doubt, impact manufacturing in Nigeria positively. The caveat, which has always been our concern, which I believe both at the national level, regional and continental level, leaders are already looking into and addressing, creating creating an enabling environment, and being able to resolve the supply side constraints that will enable participants position their businesses for beneficial trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Osidipe. Could you also please tell us what is the role of business associations to strengthen regional manufacturing and trade? And also how can this support the harnessing of the potential of the AfCFTA?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. What I would like to say, first of all, that the role of the private sector in implementation, ensuring the success of implementation of the AfCFTA, it's critical, very, very critical. If you look at those that on different structure, negotiating, discussing the protocols, the details, a majority are largely public sector people. And there's need for a rethink. I know, for example, some regional organization, and I think AfCFTA Secretariat has come in the process of also involving the private sector. So I must say the business associations, they have a critical role to play. We talk about huge potential, particularly in sport manufacturing and even for manufacturing. But those huge potential will only be tapped, effectively tapped, if business associations, particularly private sector operators, are carried along to have basic information about what is being negotiated, what is being discussed, opportunities available, trade information available that will enable them take advantage of frontier markets and all of that. But having said that, business associations have critical role, like I've said about 2 or 3 times. The first of such is that galvanizing, bringing together stakeholders. Business association has the role of bringing together stakeholders and operators in the manufacturing sector, in the case of Manufacturing Association of Nigeria. Likewise, bringing stakeholders, if you're focusing on sport manufacturing, operating within that segment so that they can come together. They will know the details of what has been negotiated. They will know the protocol. they are the ones wearing the shoe. They are the actual organization that will actually trade when trade commences. So the role is number one, they will be able to create a veritable platform for businesses, whether small, medium, large businesses, to come together, to be able to put their talk together on what is required for them to benefit from the trade. The second one, we talk about huge potential. There is also need for an intentional strategy to be put in place to further expand the market. Give you a typical example. I think Nigeria won a gold medal, first gold medal in Olympic many years ago. The natural thinking was that government, in partnership with the private sector, would put in place necessary framework, number one, that will motivate people. Because when you look at the glamour of winning the gold, inspiration will come in. Many people want to be involved in sports, but when you don't have this infrastructure, ideally what should have been done to create further market is to put in place infrastructure. Imagine having a stadium, for example, in Nigeria, a stadium in all the local governments, and you begin to put in place sport association, and you empower them to be able to come up with people that will participate in sport. I think, for example, you look at table tennis. What will it take to produce the bat to play table tennis, the ball to play table tennis? Other countries, Nigeria did not take advantage of that, no doubt, but I know efforts is in place now to ensure that we take necessary steps to do that. So business association needs to come together to show government, speak to government. Government has consistently said, in the case of Nigeria, and I believe it's the same in other African countries, that they have no business being in business. So if you have no business being in business, there is need to also create a platform where those that will actually participate in business will have vital information, I repeat again, and will be able to make input into whatever decisions that are being taken. In addition, communication. The business association also have a role in communicating to all stakeholders on what is available, opportunities are available. If you look at it from the point of view of a multilateral organization or a Pan-African organization like African Union or the AfCFTA Secretariat, the business association, when you have them in place and you give them the rightful position in discussing issues that have to do with trade, they will serve as a platform for one, getting feedbacks quickly on what is happening, the reality in the market space. They will also serve as a platform for providing veritable, quality input that will enable government, both at the national level, regional and continental level, be able to to put in place the necessary framework that will make them benefit maximally. I also think that business association should also engage in capacity building. The role also is to train, improve the capacity of, because I've listed the few minutes that I joined before I came on board, I put on my video. Information is critical. And except we create a business association, I also supported to create an avenue where we can build the capacity of all the people that are participating in trade. We may not be able to take advantage of it. At the end, we may just end up creating opportunity for third-party countries to leverage on the trade corridor to benefit at the expense. And finally, so that I can stop at this point, there is need, business association can also serve as a platform to develop a structured, how do I put it, a structured framework that will enable all the players focus on building, including government, including AU, including AfCFTA, etc., building an African brand. I appreciate one or two persons of the panelists have talked about the fact that they've started developing. Listen to me, when you look at the huge opportunity in sport industry, running up to almost about $500 billion. If you look at the top players, when you look at the importers of equipment, importers of materials, exporters of materials in Africa, you will see that majority of them are not African countries. They are non-African countries. You won't find any African country in that top 10. But when you look at the other side of it, when you focus on looking at the whole list to check out countries that even importing, either sporting equipment or materials or exporting, you'll find only maybe like 6 or 5 African countries in that kind, in that rank. So it simply means, it shows that except we have an intentional policy in place that will enable players put their acts together, and rather than building one brand in Nigeria, building one small brand in Rwanda. I'm not against building brand, it's good, it's creativity, add value, but create a framework that will enable us target ultimately developing an African brand. That is the time we will be able to take a greater chunk of the available opportunity in the sport industry or sport manufacturing industry. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Segun. I like the fact that you mentioned information and communication. I think sometimes that is, the hardest challenge. Sometimes businesses have access to finance, but because of lack of information, they are not able to survive in the industry. So I think communication and also just being able to provide information, especially through sessions like this, is very important. Now, here's a question for all the panelists. According to the AU, the African diaspora is the 6th region of the African diaspora is the 6th region of the continent and fastest growing. What opportunities exist for the diaspora to also be engaged within the AfCFTA, boosting trade and economies of African nations? Of course, we do understand that we have other Africans out there who could also be able to benefit from the AfCFTA. Anyone is free to please answer this question. Yes, Mark, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think we can use the diaspora if they are organized to create awareness in the market availability in where they are. For example, if they are in Europe, they can actually tell us what can be sold in Europe. If they're in America, they can tell us what can be sold in America. So we can use them for the purposes of information on the availability of markets in those areas. But when it comes to investment, I don't think most of them having migrated. To me, their mind have been changed. They are more of either Europe or America. I don't think most of them would like to come and invest in Africa now. But I think to me, of immediate importance is that they have the information. They can help us to create a network of where they're also involved in, for example, in importing what we are trying to make in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Dr. Osidipe, please go ahead.
Okay, I would just like to re-emphasize again, looking at diaspora, yes, it's a huge segment that we can't overlook. But I would like to re-emphasize again, the name of the game is engagement. Do we have a structure in place that we can engage these people? Because except you have a structured platform in place to engage with these people, both at the national level. I know some countries, for example, in Nigeria, we have even a commission for diaspora where they relate, but are they talking about trade? Are they talking about investment opportunity? No, the answer is no. They are talking about what is affecting somebody. Somebody has been arrested, somebody is maltreated. So there is need for a structured platform also to be in place to engage the diaspora. I must say, diaspora remittances is so huge. Many are looking for opportunity, where to invest, what to participate in, but they don't have information. So for
I think we lost Dr. Osidipe. Does anyone else want to answer the question of how the diaspora could also be involved in the benefits of the AfCFTA? I think he's having connection issues. While we wait for him to reconnect, let's go to John. John, please go ahead and answer the question. Doctor, we are going to go back to you soon as you can connect.
Thank you. Also, I would like to add to what Dr. Segun was saying. My contribution actually will be on the place of competence and integrity. Yes, we are aware that the diaspora may have the resources to come invest back home. But the other thing we also need to look at is, do we have competence to receive their investments? And are we able to, how do I put it? Are we able to also demonstrate trust that will attract that investment? We've seen a lot of cases where diaspora may want to come back home to invest, and probably even on getting back home and having to do business, there are a lot of probably shady things that happen. There are legislations, or let me say the rule of law, actually being put in place to protect the investment of the diaspora so that at the end of the day, they don't end up regretting coming back home. Then the other thing is the place of security, and I'm saying this particularly as it relates to Africa. Yes, it's good to want to draw investors, diasporas to come back home to invest, let me say probably into sports manufacturing, agricultural and the likes. But we also have to be able to provide what is needed to make the continent attractive, not just to diaspora, but investors generally. Yes, we have opportunities. Yes, we have the huge markets, but we must ensure that we also are able to put forward competence, security, and trust to make these opportunities something that is quite possible to harness. Thank you.
I'm a diaspora. So I think I can answer a lot of that question. And my family is, I'm in the United States right now. My family lives here. So I came to Nigeria and Africa by myself. And again, I go back to what me and Charlie talk about is all about passion and tenacity. I can talk about all my challenges all day, moving back to Nigeria, not knowing anybody. When I moved back to Nigeria, I didn't know anybody. I kind of had to figure it out myself. The environment can be very hostile and can be very challenging. But I don't think there's a template for any diet. I get that question all the time from diasporas like myself. How do you move back? How did you do this? It's not for everybody. Africa is a different environment in every way, business, social, cultural. Although you're African, it's not for everybody. So you just gotta know I think one of my advantages was I was looking at this as a legacy project. So I think even with the failures and the challenges and everything, if you don't have the passion and tenacity, I think it's going to take a long time where there's now the gateway is now open for everybody. That's just the way I look at it.
Thank you, Ogot. It's good that you didn't leave and forget about Africa. Thank you that you're still giving back to the continent, because I think most people just go away and forget to give back. Okay, as we are about to get into the Q&A.
Abby, can I have a few words on the diaspora stuff?
Yes, please, Charlie, in 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds, oh my God, okay. I think it's a huge amount of resources. I mean, I mentioned earlier about getting funds together to do enterprise challenge funds to get the races going, basically, get starting business. So there's huge amounts of resources to do that. Whether you can get some of the diaspora funds to do that, I don't know. Particularly, I mentioned about development partners, donors and so forth, fine, you get the anchor donors, but also what about African foundations? Rich people in Africa with their foundations. I know a lot of them obviously in West Africa, in Nigeria, for instance, possibly attracted to this and about, starting a fund to get things going in sport and sports manufacturing, but the whole ecosystem. So maybe you can get some stuff from that as well. So I don't know how to do the architecture of that. That's up to some fund manager, but that's a way to get resources, I think, and particularly it'll be good to come from Africa and African foundations.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you everyone for your contributions. Before we go to the Q&A, quickly, the AfCFTA also includes a protocol on the free movements of people because we are creating a single African market, which means we want to have a borderless Africa. So what do you think could be the benefits of that? How do you think the protocol on the free movement of persons could help just boost the sports industry? Okay, I'm going to take contributions, just 2 contributions, then we can go to the Q&A.
I think a borderless Africa is it's a great thing, and I can't even imagine the opportunity or the potential. I know it comes with challenges too, but the potential for a borderless Africa, it's very, 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 I think it will be the biggest market in the world. I don't even know what else to say about that. I don't see any market right now that has that potential.
I agree.
Okay, yeah. As a youth worker, one of the things I think that will actually contribute to the development of young people is that it will enhance their cultural competence. We're going to see a lot of young people wanting to know more about other African countries and whatever it is that is available there. So, for example, the way the West African region is so diverse in terms of language and all of the cultural barriers, I think young people, the more they get aware of the Continental Free Trade Agreements, the more they want to, specifically as regards the movement of persons, the more they will want to explore, what exists in other cultures, the more they will want to go out there and say, oh, this is what is obtainable in maybe East Africa, this is what is obtainable in West Africa, in other regions. And what that will actually bring in place is that we're going to have young Africans being developed as global citizens. They're able to live and work and adapt to wherever culture they find themselves across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for your insightful contributions. We're going to move to the Q&A now. The first question coming from Shiba Nyaronga. She says, the need exists within the continent for products that are in tune with the terrain, as mentioned by Alive and Kicking and AfCFTA Sports. How do we encourage users to buy from African producers? That's for you, Charlie.
Okay, well, I mean, I mentioned earlier about how, our balls, our leather balls are very good for rural areas in Africa. That's good. It's about the thing. I mean, things do change. I mean, we're now, Africa's become more urban. By the 2050, the urban population will double. To a certain extent, people probably will trying to do the synthetic stuff. So that's where we have to chase, and we have to improve our products and getting a decently priced synthetic ball out there in the local market. What we're trying to do as I mentioned earlier about in Alive and Kicking, is about this issue about devolving production. Now we've started something called Business in the Box. It's basically getting the panels and then basically trying to organize local entrepreneurs to make balls, sell balls, and distribute balls into the rural population. So, you know, that's I mean, it's early days yet, and we probably need some finance to actually get it going. But we did actually use this in refugee camps in northern Kenya, and it worked. It got financed actually from a development partner by doing it. But it's also about, you know, getting, as I mentioned earlier, African solutions to the African market. But also it's getting scale, and it's getting a lot of people involved in the alive and kicking commerce. I mean, I mentioned that we have made 1,000 jobs for people, but by doing that, we'll have a hell of a lot more. And we need more. The African population, I think by 2050 is going to double. So sub-Saharan Africa, it's probably going to be 2 million people. They need jobs. They need jobs, and that's absolutely important. So, it's about getting the ball for Africa and getting the business models that can get scale.
Thank you, Charlie. Indeed, there's need to be able to support African-made products because there are a lot of benefits that could come with that, including job creation. I'll go to Ugo. Brian Wesala says, another challenge is competition for second-hand goods and charity donations. So we need strategies to especially reduce dependence on material donations. And as you, Ugo, rightly points out, enable people to afford what we produce, especially at the grassroots.
Well, I think for us, that is I don't even call it a challenge, that's a situation. And to deal with that, whether it's fake products or secondhand goods, which Africa is a dumping ground for, we are more focused on creating products that is needed by Africans. We create fabrics, we create products, we create Afrocentric products. We create not just in color, not just in the colors or the prints. We create products that are already existing and modernizing it into athleisure. So I understand that in the next month, we are creating products. We are creating a whole line that's going to cost $10 and below. Whether it's t-shirts, soccer boots, and so that we compete in that market where we're making sure, and I think with time, if there's enough alpha sports and enough sports manufacturers creating those products at the level where it's more affordable in Africa, people that use Africa as a dumping ground for secondhand products will have to find another continent to do that. So I think for us, we're not necessarily concerned about that. We can even compete at that level because we're organic, we're African, we're homegrown. You know, with time, with more machineries, with more market, with more open borders, with more distribution, I think at some point, even with the secondhand products, they can't even compete with us with brand new products. So it's not necessarily a concern. I think it's just creating the direction we're going to go at some point is to make our products so affordable, brand new products affordable in Africa for Africans.
Abby, we have similar problems with us about dumping as well. Whereas Ugo was, so for us, it's a bit more than that. And sometimes it's really irritating. And a lot of it is from actually NGOs and donors actually doing it. So putting balls through which, cheap balls, which will break within a week. And effectively, to a certain thing, tax jobs because, for our people. So, it's brilliant. I can understand what Ugo says, and if you can get some, brands out, which is good, then there won't be any dumping and all the rest of it. But sometimes it's a bit irritating, very irritating. Yeah.
Charlie, I agree with you, and I think this is actually a perfect time for government intervention for stuff like that.
Yeah, sure, agreed. Agreed.
Thank you, Ugo and Charlie. It goes back to, the need to sensitize people on why they need to support African-made products. One last question for John from Seth Samuel. He asks, how can we sensitize and create awareness to youth about the manufacturing sports industry in Nigeria, and what channels can we engage the government on the taxes and allowance that the youth can enjoy? Over to you, John.
Okay, so basically, I think, there's a need for a lot of awareness on sports manufacturing and even the Continental Free Trade Agreement among young people in Nigeria. I was discussing with some postgraduate students here at the University of Ibadan, and I was surprised that they're actually not so aware of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. They've never heard of it. So there's a need to ensure young people are aware and are well educated, about the Continental Free Trade Agreement and about our sports manufacturing. So I also want to refer back to some of the things that Ugo was saying about the place of passion, the place of you just putting yourself out there to learn things and make things work. Now, for any Nigerian youth that is interested in going into sports manufacturing and sport trade and all of that, must first be aware of the challenges that is on ground, so that by the time you step out, to want to implement and you are confronted with these challenges, you don't see it as a surprise because you've made yourself aware of doing that before stepping into it. So first of all, awareness, then the place of commitment. Then coming from the place of public policy perspective, which is what I always want to advocate, is that the environment has to be very, very encouraging for young people. There have to be capacity building, skills development. I mean, if as a young person I have interest in sports manufacturing, where do I go? How do I learn it? How do I access raw materials? If after producing, how do I go about my distribution channel and all of that? And I think the easiest way to ensuring that is to make available learning opportunities for young people. Once young people are able to have that experience, they're able to get their hands onto the whole process, probably through apprenticeship or through internship or through a fellowship program, so to say, are they able to go back and internalize all of the knowledge you've acquired from that experience and be able to start something reasonable with it. Let me speak from my own pharmacy background. As a pharmacist, we all know that there are various manufacturing companies across the country and all of that. For a young pharmacist that went through the system, the school of pharmacy, you are exposed to industrial pharmacy, pharmaceutics, you're able to understand all that is involved. You go on internship programs. After your internship, you get to also work for a while. All of those experiences will accumulate to you understanding what the trade is involved. It may not necessarily have to be that long or so intensive for sports manufacturing, but there is that need to interface, with the industry, learn from it, and being able to have the necessary support that is needed to start your business and scale up from there. We can't shy away from that. We can't shy away from the place of capacity building. We can't shy away from the place of making funds available, and we can't shy away from the place of government and all other stakeholders committing to ensuring that all of that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I hope we have stakeholders listening and that each and every one of us that have been mentioned know what part they have to play in making this possible. Okay, so before we close, I'm just going to go back to you, the panelists. I'll ask that you give us a quick takeaway from today's session, 1 minute each, starting with Mark. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think we need to integrate Africa, and by integrating Africa, we need to work on infrastructure, both soft and hard. And one of the things that we have come out from this meeting is that we need a lot of exposure to the youth, to those people who want to manufacture. It's still not there. It's a resource that we need to exploit. We need to expose our people on the opportunities available in Africa and the opportunities available outside the continent. And second, we need to invest in technology. You can manufacture something today, but the next day somebody manufactures a better product. We need to constantly invest in technology upgrading in Africa. That is also lacking. When we manufacture in Africa, we're competing with the world. So we need to find a way of how we upgrade our technology all the time. Lastly, to give chance to other people, financing. Financing is a big issue. Yes, like now in Kenya, we have got a lot of banks, but I think the banks still want that product that is selling. Startup is a big issue for the banks. So we need a way where we can have money for the startup. And I think the idea of the foundation can be taken by the policymakers in the continent. Let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Dr. Osidipe.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. For my end, judging from the time that I joined, I would like to say takeaway for me is that AfCFTA is here with us. We need to do all that we need to do to ensure that it works. And in doing that, we need to take care of critical challenges and hurdles that could affect successful implementation of AfCFTA. And focusing on sport manufacturing, we need to put in place whether a common continental policy that speaks to that issue. Because if you don't have a policy and a framework in place that will enable people keying into what you have on ground, and it will be difficult to measure, we'll just keep talking. And over the years, we'll keep creating opportunities for others for me, being part of this, it's a wonderful time for me in the sense that from the point of view of our session, it has now thrown up issues concerning paying due attention to sport manufacturing. When you look at, like I mentioned earlier, available data, you'll see that the opportunities and potentials are really, really rife, and we are not taking advantage of it. And finally, to give room for others to also talk. Take away also is that there is a need, we can't overemphasize it, creating enabling environment, a level playing field that will enhance competitiveness of this product. Except they are competitive, then we won't be able to maximize the benefit thereof. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Osidipe. Let's go to Chadi, then we'll have Ugo, then John. In that order, please.
Okay, for me, I'd just like to say that for John, Ugo, and Segun, there, I just do a bit of promotion here. There's a Nigerian ball on our in our shop, which I think you might like. It'd be very good. So I'm going to do that, a bit of sales, but my takeaway is probably what I said before. The issue now about trade barriers are going down. That's going to get, it's going to worse. We've got, as I said, 17% inter-African trade. It's going to go up. We have to be more competitive to sell and export, but it's going to go up. The population of Africa, as I said earlier, 1 billion now in the next 40 years, possibly to 2 million, huge amounts of urbanization. The economies will become more integrated. As Mark says, it will become more integrated. So there's huge amounts of opportunity. The thing we need now is about trying to get the finance to get things going. Now, Ugo's done it. We kind of done it in a small scale, alive and kicking. But we need to basically get some finance to do it, to get some more sporting ecosystem on the continent. So whether that comes from governments, when it comes from development partners, or it comes from foundations or impact investors, that's needed now. And that's, I think, is what That's sort of, I'm not saying a panacea, but that's what needing to just get it going to catalyze the industry.
Ogot?
Thanks, Charlie, and thanks for everyone for having us. I think the opportunity, the potential is too immense right now. The journey in the past 3 years has been amazing. And everyone on this panel, thanks for making this happen. I think there's a lot of synergies everywhere. We're always willing to help. Our organization is about growth and empowering people, and whatever we need to do for the benefit of growing economies, hiring more people, getting people to work, and creating an industry that's right now is obsolete in the continent. It's our prerogative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ogot. And let's have John.
Okay. First, I would like to thank the organizer of this webinar. And for me, the take home really is the fact that if we actually want to get this done, we must be sure we want to get this done and put all our efforts towards ensuring the effective implementation. I'll say to some certain extent, the necessary stakeholders that are needed to kickstart certain actions are here. I know Dr. Oluwasegun Osidipe is with the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, Ugo and Charlie, they are well experienced in sports manufacturing. We have representative of the East African community. We have the representative of Economic Commission of Africa. I mean, to some certain extent, the necessary stakeholders to make things work are here. So in terms of engaging young people, in terms of giving opportunities to young people in sports manufacturing, I believe if we actually want to move forward with some of the points we've raised during this conversation, the stakeholders that are needed to kickstart that process to some certain extent in Africa, we are here. So it's left to us to want to decide if at all we want to go in that direction. In terms of skills development, I believe that is one area that is very, very important in encouraging young people's participation in sports manufacturing. There's a need for education, there's a need for capacity building, there's a need for skills development, either in form of internship, apprenticeship, fellowship, or whatever learning opportunities that can be made available. Also, the place of having incentives that encourages young people to get to participate in sports manufacturing. Ugo was talking the other time about distribution being one of the major things that is needed to be tracked in all of this process. I also want to add that being able to key young people into the distribution and supply chain management structure of sports goods will also be one of the easiest ways to easily empower them in sports manufacturing. So for me, that is the takeaway. And so lastly, the commitment of governments to investing in sports and recreational facilities will also go a long way, because it will in turn drive it will widen the market for sports manufacturers. I mean, they will be able to have more people demanding for their products. So governments will have to make efforts to investing in our sports facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for your insightful contributions. Thank you to the attendees for the various questions that you did bring forward, which helped, drive this conversation. And we've learned that skills training for young people is very important to help with, sports manufacturing, and that there's needs for every stakeholder to play their part in making the AfCFTA work, and for the sports manufacturing to benefit accordingly. There's also need to include various sports bodies and also business associations in the implementation of the AfCFTA, and just helping the sports industry benefit from the agreement. We've also learned that there's need to support African-made products if the industry could go forward. Okay, so before we close, I'm going to invite the founder of Africa Sports Unified, Gabriel Ajala, to please give us the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abinayda. Once again, just want to say thank you to everyone who has been involved, to our panelists, to the team behind the scenes. Thank you so much. This definitely would not have happened without you. To all of our esteemed panelists, thank you for your time as well. These conversations are extremely beneficial and useful, and hopefully this will really pave the way in the future to opening up opportunities for people like yourselves already in the industry and in the sector, for the youth coming through, and for wider markets as well. Also want to say a huge thank you again to UNECA, the people behind the scenes working very, very, very hard. And just in this collaboration along with us to help, create opportunities within Africa via the AfCFTA. And as Abinayda mentioned, my name is Gabriel Jala, founder of Africa Sports Unified. And this topic has been very poignant as well. I know we touched on the diaspora. Our aim, we're based in London, but our aim is to unite the African sports market, engaging with various different stakeholders to get the conversation going and to create opportunities. As Ugo said, on the continent, the focus is on natural resources and agriculture, which is very understandable. But with the expertise that we have, we know that sports can hugely contribute to economies, not just in monetary terms, but social capital, engaging with youth, and ultimately creating jobs, as Charlie did say. So that's why we're here, to educate, create opportunities. We definitely host more events and resourcing to help pave the way for future leaders within Africa, and really to create a sustainable ecosystem for sports, engaging with the whole Pan-African sports market. So thanks to everyone who has engaged with us again and joining this webinar. We do have another one coming up, which I'll let you know in due time. But in the meantime, please do engage with us. As Laura Paez said at the beginning, we're working with UNECA on a AfCFTA sports mentorship program. So actually engaging with youth and partnering them with experts in the field. And we have a lot more. So please do follow us on our website. And we do have a lot more content about sports and how that can be used in different and various ways with a focus on the African sports market. But thanks again for joining everyone, and really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.